Most everyone has heard the speech, "A day that will live in infamy." Why is that? Well, it was given the day after one of the most deadly attacks on U.S. soil. Hello, my name is Ryan Vance, and this is a speech over the topic of the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Now, I have read several books and watched several documentaries over the topic of the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And now, almost 80 years later, it's still relevant because it set into motion the U.S. entered World War II, which we were formerly staying neutral. We led into World War II, and then it created tensions after World War II for years to come. To summarize, the bombing of Pearl Harbor was one of the most deadly attacks on U.S. soil. Japan, back in the 1930s and 1940s, was looking to become a superpower, but with limited resources, it was hard to do so. So, in 1937, they started to invade other countries, and specifically in 1937, they invaded Manchuria, China, which China was an ally of the U.S. at the time. The invasion upon other countries led to the embargoes placed on Japan, which cut off oil, and it was used to curb Japanese aggression. Japan began to mull over the possibility of attacking the U.S. at Pearl Harbor. Admiral Yamamoto began talking to his generals and Japanese officials on this idea. U.S. Ambassador Joseph C. Grew wired Washington telling them that there was a possible attack coming to Pearl Harbor, or specifically on U.S. soil. And no one in Washington believed him because who would? They thought that they would be more likely to bomb the Philippines, as the Philippines were much closer and there was much less military power there. So it would just be a small hit, but it wouldn't cause the direct attack. This angered the Japanese, so they began preparing the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, for later in 1941. Now, the Japanese were ready in November 1941, ready to attack, and information, including a war warning, was received in Washington. Although they had that, for some reason they withheld it from General Kimmel and Short. The attack began at Hawaiian time, 7:55. The attack lasted 2 hours, 20 minutes. 2,400 lives were lost, 18 ships were sunk or damaged, and 300 aircraft were lost. Although very devastating, it was not as successful as the Japanese had hoped, because they missed a lot. There were 4 aircraft carriers that were not there. They were not present. They were out on a mission, and those were the main targets of a specific air group. So this air group comes in, they have nothing to shoot. So they have to reroute and come in with another air group. This causes confusion. They miss the oil tanks. They miss a lot of important stuff. So to summarize, Pearl Harbor was a very devastating attack. Although not as devastating as they'd hoped, it was. A day that will live in infamy is an extremely important statement. And in the case of Pearl Harbor, it is one.